After 8 years of living in my house, my son-in-law and daughter won the lottery $95 million. That evening, my son-in-law looked me straight in the eye and said, "Get the hell out of this house. This house is mine now." I just smiled. Then I asked him one single question. That question made his face turn pale as a corpse. I would make him lose everything, not because I was cruel, but because he was too greedy to realize he was standing on the edge of collapse. Welcome to our story. Before we begin, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Quick note. This is a fictional story with dramatized elements for experience and meaningful lessons. Any resemblance to real names or situations is purely coincidental, but the message, that's what truly matters. After 8 years, Connor told me I had to leave. I smiled. He didn't know about the second ticket. Hello. My name is Theodore Marsh. I'm 72 years old, and I spent 38 years as a highway engineer for the Oregon Department of Transportation. I built bridges, not just the kind that cross rivers, though I did plenty of those, but the kind that connect people to their jobs, their families, their futures. Engineering teaches you to think about foundations, about what holds up under pressure and what doesn't, about planning for the long haul. I should have applied those same principles to my own life. I live well. I used to live comfortably in a house at 2847 Ponderosa Lane here in Bend, Oregon. If you're familiar with Central Oregon, you know Bend sits at the foot of the Cascade Mountains, surrounded by pine forests and high desert air so clean it makes your lungs ache in the best way. Ponderosa Lane runs along the southern edge of town, a quiet street where the yards are wide and the neighbors know your name. The kind of place where you can hear the wind move through the trees at night. My late wife Marianne and I built that house together in 1988. And I mean built with our own hands. I did the framing, and the foundation poured the concrete myself with help from a buddy who worked construction. Marianne picked every tile, every paint color, every cabinet hinge. She planted the flower beds and the row of young birch trees along the driveway. Over the years, those birches grew tall and straight, their white bark glowing in the moonlight. Marianne used to say they were the bones of the house, the part that held the beauty up. We were married for 41 years. She passed away in the spring of 2016. Pancreatic cancer. It happened fast, too fast. One day she was complaining about back pain, and 6 weeks later she was gone. I still remember the exact moment the doctor told us there was nothing more they could do. Marianne squeezed my hand and said, "Well, Theodore, I guess we'll just have to make the best of the time we have." That was her way. Steady, practical, kind. After she was gone, the house felt too big, too quiet. I kept her side of the bed, made her slippers by the nightstand. I'd walk past the kitchen and expect to smell coffee, but there was only silence. Friends told me it would get easier. It didn't. It just got different. That fall-autumn of 2016, my daughter Claire called. She was 30 at the time, married to a man named Connor Blake. They'd been together since college, married for about 2 years. Claire had always been my little girl, the one who'd sit on my lap while I sketched out bridge designs on graph paper, asking 1,000 questions. She was smart, curious, full of life. But somewhere along the way, after she married Connor, she changed. She called less, visited less. When she did come by, Connor always had some reason to cut the visit short. That November, Claire told me Connor had been laid off from his sales job. They were struggling to make rent in Portland. She sounded exhausted, scared. So I did what any father would do. I told them to come home, to move in with me until they got back on their feet. "Just for a few months, Dad," Claire said, "until Connor finds something new." I believed her. They moved in just before Thanksgiving. At first it felt good to have people in the house again. Claire cooked dinners, and Connor helped me replace some rotted boards on the back porch. We'd sit around the table after dinner, talking about nothing in particular, weather, sports plans for the holidays. It felt like family. But then the months turned into a year. Connor didn't find work. Or maybe he stopped looking, I couldn't tell. He spent more and more time on the couch, scrolling through his phone, making phone calls behind closed doors. Claire started working double shifts at a medical office in town, coming home exhausted, too tired to talk. And slowly, so slowly, I didn't notice it happening, my house stopped feeling like mine. Connor began making little comments. "You really should update this kitchen, Theodore. These cabinets are from the 80s. Oh, or, you know, we could turn your workshop into a real guest room if we cleaned it out." At first I thought he was just trying to help. Then I realized he was measuring, planning, taking inventory. Year 2 became year 3, then 4, then 5. I kept thinking they'd leave once they saved enough, once Connor got a good lead on a job. But it never happened. Instead, I was the one who started feeling like a guest. Connor would rearrange the furniture without asking. He'd invite his friends over, and I'd retreat to my bedroom. Claire stopped meeting my eyes. When I'd try to talk to her alone, Connor would appear in the doorway listening. That was 8 years ago. I should have seen it sooner. I should have recognized the way Connor slowly turned my daughter against me, the way he made himself comfortable in a house he didn't build, a life he didn't earn. But I didn't, because I loved my daughter. Because I thought somehow things would get better. Then 3 months ago, I bought 2 lottery tickets at the Quick Stop on Highway 97. Just a couple of Powerball tickets, $2 each. I gave one to Claire as a little gift, a gesture. I kept the other one. 3 days later, one of those tickets won $95 million. And that's when Connor decided I had to leave. But Connor made one mistake. When I bought those lottery tickets, I didn't buy just one. Let me tell you how it all started. How 8 years ago I opened my door to Connor and Claire. But first, I need to go back a little further. Back to the spring of 2016 when I lost Marianne. She was 60 years old. We'd been planning a trip to the coast that summer. One of those long, slow drives along Highway 101 where you stop at every little town and eat clam chowder and watch the waves come in. Marianne loved the ocean. She used to say it reminded her that the world was bigger than whatever was troubling you. We never made that trip. The cancer moved fast. By the time the doctors caught it, there wasn't much they could do except make her comfortable. I stayed with her every day in that hospital room, holding her hand, talking about nothing and everything. She told me stories I'd heard 100 times before, about the day we bought the land on Ponderosa Lane, about the time Claire was born 3 weeks early, and I nearly drove off the road racing to the hospital. She laughed. Even then, she laughed. On her last morning, she squeezed my hand and said, "Theodore, don't you dare turn into one of those old men who stops living. Promise me." I promised. 3 days later, we held her funeral at the First Community Church. Claire came down from Portland and stood beside me at the graveside, her hand wrapped around mine. She cried quietly, her head on my shoulder. For a moment, it felt like I still had family, like I wasn't completely alone. But then Claire went back to Portland, and I went back to that empty house on Ponderosa Lane. And the silence was unbearable. That fall November of 2016, Claire called. I could hear the strain in her voice before she even said the words. "Dad, Connor got laid off. We're behind on rent. I don't know what we're going to do." I didn't hesitate. "Come home, sweetheart. Stay here until you get back on your feet." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." 2 weeks later, they pulled up in a rented truck with all their belongings. I helped Connor carry boxes into the spare bedroom. Claire hugged me on the front porch and whispered, "Thank you, Dad. It's just for a little while." I believed her. The first year or two, it wasn't so bad. Connor would help me with projects around the house, fixing a leaky faucet, replacing the weather stripping on the windows. Claire would cook Sunday dinners, pot roast, and mashed potatoes just like Marianne used to make. We'd sit at the kitchen table afterward talking about the weather, about Claire's new job at the medical office, about Connor's job search. It felt almost normal, almost like family, But somewhere around year 3, things started to shift. It was small at first. Connor began rearranging furniture without asking. One day, I came home from the hardware store and found that the old armchair, Marianne's favorite, the one she'd sit in to read every evening, had been moved to the garage. When I asked about it, Connor shrugged. It didn't fit the space, Theodore. We needed room for the new TV stand. Then he started moving Marianne's things. The framed photos of her that I kept on the mantel were taken down and replaced with generic prints from a department store. Her gardening tools disappeared from the shed. When I asked Claire about it, she looked away. Connor thought it might be healthier for you, Dad. You know, to move on. Move on. I didn't say anything. I just put one of Marianne's photos back on my nightstand where Connor wouldn't touch it. By year 4 and 5, the changes were harder to ignore. Connor stopped asking my opinion about anything. He'd invite people over, friends of his I'd never met, and I'd retreat to my bedroom. He started talking about our house instead of your house, as if he'd built it, as if he'd poured the foundation with his own hands. Claire stopped sitting with me after dinner. She'd disappear into their room, and I'd hear them talking in low voices, the door closed. I tried to talk to her. I'd catch her in the kitchen in the morning and say, "Honey, is everything all right?" She'd smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Everything's fine, Dad." But it wasn't. By year 6, 7, 8, 2021, 2022, 2023, into 2024, I felt like a stranger in my own home. Connor would walk past me in the hallway without a word. He'd make decisions about repairs, about landscaping, about painting rooms, and I'd only find out after it was done. When I objected, he'd sigh like I was being unreasonable. "Theodore, we're just trying to help. You're not getting any younger." I started spending more time in my bedroom. I'd eat dinner alone. I'd listen to the sound of their voices in the living room, their laughter, and I'd feel the walls of my own house closing in. My only relief was my neighbor, Bernard Sullivan. Bernard is 74, a retired postal worker with a dry sense of humor and a stubborn streak a mile wide. He'd been my friend for over 30 years, ever since he and his wife, Maureen, moved in 3 doors down. Bernard would stop by every week or so, usually with some excuse, needing to borrow a tool, asking about the weather, inviting me over for coffee. But I knew what he was really doing. He was checking on me. One Tuesday morning in early April this year, 2024, I walked over to Bernard's house. He was in his garage tinkering with an old lawnmower. He looked up and grinned. "So, Theodore Marsh, haven't seen you in daylight in 2 weeks. Thought maybe you'd turned into a vampire." I managed to smile. "Just keeping busy." "Busy hiding in your room, you mean?" I didn't argue. Bernard wiped his hands on a rag and looked at me seriously. "You know you don't have to live like this, right?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." We stood there for a minute, neither of us saying anything. Then Bernard pulled 2 crumpled dollar bills out of his pocket and held them up. "Tell you what, I'm heading to the Quick Stop to buy a Powerball ticket. Come with me. Buy one yourself. Maybe you'll win and finally get yourself out of that damn house." I laughed. It was the first time I'd laughed in weeks. "Bernard, I've never bought a lottery ticket in my life." "Then it's about time you did." So I went with him. And on that Tuesday morning, the first week of April 2024, I did something I'd never done before. I bought a lottery ticket. Not because I needed the money, but because Bernard dared me to, and because for just a moment I wanted to believe that something, anything, could change. Those lottery tickets cost me $4, $2 each. The day I bought them was a Wednesday, April 3rd, 2024. I'd gone over to Bernard and Maureen Sullivan's house that afternoon, same as I did most weeks. Bernard and I had a standing chess match, and Maureen always put on a pot of coffee and sat with us at the kitchen table, reading her book and occasionally making sarcastic comments about Bernard's terrible chess strategy. You're getting predictable in your old age, Theodore, Bernard said, moving his knight. I've seen that opening 3 times this month. And yet you still haven't beaten me, I replied. Maureen glanced up from her book and smiled. She's 71, sharp as a tack. With silver hair, she wears short and a laugh that fills a room. You two have been playing the same game for 30 years, she said. Honestly, I don't know how either of you stays awake. We played in comfortable silence for a while. Then Bernard leaned back in his chair and said, You see the Powerball jackpots up to 95 million. I didn't look up from the board. I don't play the lottery, Bernard. I know, but maybe you should. You could use a little excitement in your life. I moved my bishop. Checkmate in 3 moves. Bernard groaned. Damn it, Theodore. Maureen closed her book. Bernard, leave the man alone. If he doesn't want to throw his money away. It's $2. Bernard interrupted. $2 for a little bit of hope. Come on, Theodore. Live a little. I'm heading to the quick stop after this. Come with me. I dare you. I looked at him. He had that stubborn glint in his eye, the one that meant he wasn't going to let it go. And honestly, after 8 years of feeling invisible in my own house, maybe I did need a little excitement, even if it was just a stupid lottery ticket. Fine, I said. I'll buy one. Bernard grinned. That's the spirit. An hour later, we pulled into the quick stop on Highway 97 in Bernard's old pickup. The place is a small run-down gas station with peeling paint and a buzzing neon sign that says, Open 24 hours. Dave Wilson, the owner, was behind the counter. Dave's 55 balding, with a thick mustache and a flannel shirt. He seems to wear year-round. He looked up when we walked in and raised an eyebrow. Bernard Sullivan and Theodore Marsh, together, in the middle of the afternoon. This can't be good. We're here to make you rich, Dave, Bernard said, slapping $2 bills on the counter. 1 Powerball ticket. Dave rang it up and handed Bernard the ticket. Then Bernard turned to me. Your turn. I hesitated. It felt ridiculous standing there in a gas station at 72 years old, buying a lottery ticket for the first time in my life. But I pulled out my wallet and set my debit card on the counter. Actually, Dave, give me 2 tickets. Dave blinked. 2. He printed them out, ran my card, and handed me the tickets along with the receipt. I folded the receipt carefully and slipped it into my wallet. Then I looked at the 2 tickets in my hand. They were identical, just strings of numbers. Meaningless. I shoved them in my pocket and followed Bernard back to the truck. 2 tickets, Bernard said, starting the engine. Look at you, Theodore. High roller. Don't start. That evening I went home. The house was quiet as usual. Connor was in the living room watching something on his laptop. Claire was in the kitchen cooking dinner. It was rare for her to cook anymore. Most nights she worked late or ate in her room. But tonight, she was at the stove stirring something in a pot. And for a moment, it reminded me of the old days when Marianne would stand in that exact spot humming to herself. Hey, Dad, Claire said, not looking up. Dinner's almost ready. I pulled the 2 lottery tickets out of my pocket and looked at them. On impulse, I walked over to Claire and held one out. Hey, I picked up a couple of lottery tickets today. Silly, I know. But here, you can have one. Claire turned, surprised. She wiped her hands on a towel and took the ticket. For the first time in months, she smiled a real smile, small but genuine. Thanks, Dad. Who knows, maybe we'll get lucky. Maybe, I said. Connor appeared in the doorway, his arms crossed. He looked at the ticket in Claire's hand and snorted. You bought lottery tickets. Seriously, Theodore. What you trying to win back your dignity? He walked over, plucked the ticket out of Claire's fingers, and held it up to the light, like he was examining a counterfeit bill. Powerball. 95 million. Yeah, good luck with that. Claire didn't say anything. She just turned back to the stove. I went to my bedroom, pulled the other ticket out of my pocket, and slipped it into the top drawer of my nightstand, next to Marianne's reading glasses. Then I forgot about it. 3 days later, Saturday, April 6th, I was out in my workshop sanding down a piece of cedar I'd been shaping into a small box. I liked working with my hands. It kept me sane. I was focused on the grain of the wood when I heard a scream from inside the house. Not a scream of fear, a scream of shock, of joy. I dropped the sandpaper and walked quickly toward the back door. When I stepped inside, Claire was standing in the middle of the kitchen, trembling, her phone in one hand and the lottery ticket in the other. "We won," she whispered. "We won. $95 million. Connor appeared behind her, moving fast. He snatched the ticket from her hand and ran to the laptop on the counter, pulling up the Powerball website. His eyes scanned the numbers. Once. Twice. "Holy hell," he breathed. "We actually won." I stood in the doorway watching them. Claire's hands were shaking. Connor was already on his phone, dialing a number, pacing back and forth. "Yeah, I need to speak to someone about a lottery claim. Big one. 95 million. Neither of them looked at me. I stood there for a long time, feeling something strange settle in my chest. Not excitement, not joy, just a quiet, hollow ache. Because in that moment, I realized something I should have seen years ago. I didn't exist to them anymore. I was just a ghost in my own house. That evening, I stayed out in the workshop until it got dark. When I finally walked back inside, Connor was waiting for me at the kitchen table. Connor was waiting when I walked in. His posture had changed, no longer the polite tolerance he'd worn for 8 years, but something harder. He sat at the kitchen table, arms folded. Claire stood by the sink, her back to me. "What's going on?" I asked. Connor didn't stand. "We need to talk. Our situation has changed." I stayed near the door. "What do you mean? Claire and I just won $95 million, and this house doesn't fit our lifestyle anymore." The words hung in the air. Your lifestyle. "That's right." Connor leaned back, spreading his hands. "We think you'd be more comfortable in a senior living facility, somewhere with staff medical care. We'll cover all the costs. All you have to do is sign over the property." Sign over the property. I looked at Claire. "Sweetheart, what is this?" She didn't turn around. She didn't say a word. Connor stood and walked to the counter. "Let me be clear, Theodore. We don't need your charity anymore. We don't need you. This house is a relic, bad plumbing, old wiring. We could sell it, tear it down. Either way, it's ours now." "It's mine," I whispered. Connor smiled. Not kindly. "Actually, you might want to rethink that. Because if you make this difficult, we'll take legal steps. Competency hearings, guardianship proceedings. You're 72, Theodore. You live alone, barely take care of yourself. A good lawyer could make a strong case that you're no longer capable of managing your own affairs." My hands shook. "That's a lie." "Is it? At your age, how many good years do you really have left? 5, 10? Do you want to spend them fighting us? Because we will fight, and we will win." I looked at Claire again. "Please, look at me." She turned, and for 1 second I saw something, guilt, maybe pain. But then Connor put his hand on her shoulder, and she looked away. "We're offering you a good deal," Connor said. "A clean exit. We'll set you up, cover your expenses. All you have to do is cooperate. And if I don't, then we do this the hard way. I've already started documenting things. The way you forget to pay bills, the times you've seemed confused, your isolation, your depression. A judge will think, this man needs help, and we'll be right there to provide it. My chest tightened. I couldn't breathe. Connor adjusted his shirt. Think about it tonight. We'll talk tomorrow. Come on, Claire. He walked toward the hallway. Claire followed, head down, hands clasped. She didn't look at me. And then they were gone, and I stood alone in my own kitchen, the kitchen Marianne and I had built, and I felt like a ghost. I couldn't stay there. I walked out the back door to my workshop. The smell of sawdust and varnish, the tools on pegboards, the half-finished cedar box on my workbench. I turned on the light and stood there feeling the weight of Connor's words pressing down. We don't need you. You're no longer capable. How many good years do you really have left? I sat on the old stool and put my head in my hands. I felt small, powerless, afraid. I stayed out there until it got dark. Then I walked back inside, past the kitchen, where Connor and Claire's voices drifted from behind their closed bedroom door, and into my own room. I sat on the edge of the bed, not my side, but Marianne's. It was an old habit. Whenever I needed to think, to sort through something difficult, I'd sit on her side as if somehow she was still there. I stared at the framed photo on the dresser, Marianne and me on our wedding day. Young, full of hope. I felt so far from that man now. Connor was right. I was 72. Alone. No leverage. Then my eyes drifted to the nightstand drawer. I hesitated, then pulled it open. Inside was a small envelope where I kept important things, Marianne's reading glasses, old letters, spare cash. And beneath all that, folded in half, was a slip of paper. The lottery ticket. My hands shook as I pulled it out. The numbers were printed clearly. I grabbed my phone and searched for the Powerball results. The winning numbers appeared. I compared them to the ticket. They matched. Every single one. I sat there, heart pounding. Then I pulled my wallet from my jacket. The receipt was still inside, proof I'd purchased both tickets in one transaction. I had bought them. Both of them. Connor didn't know. He thought the only winning ticket was the one he'd taken from Claire. But he was wrong. I sat back down on Marianne's side of the bed, staring at the ticket. For the first time in 8 years, I felt something other than resignation. Anger. And beneath that, something stronger. Hope. I thought about Marianne, how she'd put her hand on my shoulder when I was overthinking a problem and say, Theodore, sometimes you just have to trust the foundation. If it's solid, it'll hold. This was my foundation, this house, this life, the work I'd done. I wasn't going to let Connor take it. I slept with the ticket under my pillow that night, and when morning came, Sunday, April 7th, I picked up the phone and called Bernard. Bernard, I said when he answered. I need your help. Theodore. His voice was rough with sleep. What's wrong? I need your help, I said. My voice shook. Connor, he's trying to take my house. He's threatening me with competency hearings. But Bernard, I found something. The other lottery ticket. I bought 2. I still have one. There was a pause. Then Bernard said, I'm coming over. Right now. No, don't. Connor and Claire are here. Then come to my house. 5 minutes. He hung up. I grabbed the ticket, the receipt, my wallet, and my keys. I slipped out the back door and walked the 3 houses down to Bernard's place. He was already standing on his front porch in his bathrobe waiting. You look terrible, he said when I got close. I feel terrible. He put his hand on my shoulder and guided me inside. Maureen was in the kitchen already making coffee. She turned when she saw me and her face went soft with worry. To Theodore, honey, what happened? I sat at their kitchen table, the same table where Bernard and I had played chess just 4 days ago, and told them everything. The lottery win, Connor's threats, the assisted living facility, the competency hearings, the discovery of the second ticket. By the time I finished, Maureen's face was flushed with anger. "That snake," she said. "That absolute snake." And Claire just stood there. She didn't say a word. Bernard leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, his jaw tight. "You need a lawyer. A good one." "I don't know any lawyers." "I do," Maureen said. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts. "Rachel Kemp. She's Bernard's niece's daughter. Do you remember her? She came to our barbecue a few years back. Smart as a whip. Practices property and family law in Portland." Bernard nodded. "Rachel's tough. If anyone can handle this, she can." Maureen dialed. It rang 4 times. Then a woman's voice answered. "Aunt Maureen, it's early. Everything okay? Rachel, honey, I'm sorry to call on a Sunday, but we have an emergency. It's our neighbor Theodore Marsh. He needs help. Can you see him today?" There was a pause. Then Rachel said, "Tell me what's going on." Maureen handed me the phone. I explained everything again quickly, clearly, like I was presenting a bridge design to the state board. When I finished, Rachel was quiet for a moment. "Mr. Marsh, do you have the receipt proving you purchased both tickets in one transaction?" "Yes." "And the second ticket is still in your possession?" "Yes." "Then you have a case. Can you be in Portland by 11? I'll meet you at my office." "I'll be there." She gave me the address and hung up. I handed the phone back to Maureen. "She'll see you," Maureen said, squeezing my hand. "You're going to be okay." Bernard stood. "I'm coming with you." "No," I said. "Thank you, but I need to do this myself." Bernard studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, but you call me the second you're done." "Understand, I will." I left their house and walked back to mine. Connor's car was still in the driveway, the windows dark. I got into my truck, started the engine, and headed west toward Portland. The drive took 3 hours. Highway 97 south to Bend, then west on Route 20 through the Cascade Mountains. The road wound through pine forests and high desert scrub, past snow-capped peaks and wide-open sky. I'd driven this route 100 times when I worked for the DOT. I knew every curve, every grade, every place where ice would form in winter. I thought about Marianne, about the day we'd driven this same road to pick out tile for the kitchen. She'd fallen asleep in the passenger seat, her head against the window, and I'd driven in silence, just watching her breathe. I thought about Claire, about the little girl who used to sit on my lap while I sketched bridge designs, about the way she'd laugh when I'd let her help me with measurements, holding the end of the tape measure, like it was the most important job in the world. I thought about Connor, about the way he'd looked at me last night, cold and calculating, like I was a problem to be solved. And I thought about what I'd spent my whole career doing, building things that held up under pressure. Bridges, roads, foundations. Everything I'd ever built had one thing in common: a solid base. If the foundation was strong, the structure would stand. This house was my foundation, this life, and I wasn't going to let it crumble. I reached Portland just before 11. Rachel's office was downtown in a brick building near the river. I parked on the street and took the elevator to the 3rd floor. Rachel was waiting in the lobby. She was 42 tall and sharp-eyed, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. She shook my hand firmly. "Mr. Marsh, come on back." Her office was small, but professional law books on the shelves framed diplomas on the wall. She gestured to a chair and sat across from me, a legal pad in front of her. "Tell me everything," she said. So I did. I told her about the tickets, the receipt, Connor's threats, the competency hearings, the assisted living facility. I showed her the ticket and the receipt. She examined both carefully, took photos, made notes. When I finished, she leaned back and looked at me. Here's the situation. Under Oregon law, the person who purchased the ticket owns the ticket, unless there's a signed agreement transferring ownership. You bought both tickets in one transaction. You have the receipt. You gave one ticket to your daughter as a gift. There was no contract, no sale, no transfer of ownership. The ticket your son-in-law is trying to claim legally belongs to you. Relief washed over me. So I have a case. You have a strong case, but we need to act fast. We're going to file a notice of dispute with the Oregon Lottery Commission today. Right now. Today. Today. If we wait, Connor could try to claim the prize and make this messier. We need to get ahead of it. She pulled out her laptop and started typing. For the next 2 hours, we worked together, drafting the notice, signing affidavits, gathering evidence. At 2:47 that afternoon, Rachel hit send on the electronic filing. Done, she said. The commission has been notified. Connor can't claim that prize now without a hearing. I stared at her. Just like that. Just like that. She closed her laptop and looked at me seriously. Mr. Marsh, when they find out about this, they're going to be angry. Are you safe at home? I'll be careful. If anything happens, anything at all, you call the police. And you call me. Understand? I understand. I shook her hand and left. The drive home felt different. The mountains were the same, the road was the same, but I wasn't. I didn't feel defeated anymore. I felt armed. I reached Bend just after 7. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. I pulled onto Ponderosa Lane and saw the lights on in my house. Connor's car was in the driveway. I parked and walked to the front door. Before I could open it, Connor appeared in the hallway, his phone in his hand, his face red. "What the hell did you do?" he said. I'd seen Connor angry before. But this was different. This wasn't the cold, calculating anger of last night. This was the rage of a man who'd already started spending money that wasn't his. Connor's voice filled the house before I could even close the door. Our lawyer got the notice. You want to explain this? He was standing in the hallway, blocking my path, his phone still in his hand. His face was flushed, his jaw tight. I could see the vein in his temple pulsing. I set my keys on the table by the door and met his eyes. I don't owe you an explanation. You filed a dispute claim, Connor said, his voice rising. You're trying to steal our money. I'm not stealing anything, I said calmly. I bought both tickets. I have the receipt. You gave one to Claire. You can't take back a gift. I gave Claire a ticket. Not the winning ticket. That ticket is mine. Connor stepped closer. You think a judge is going to believe that? You think anyone's going to believe you just happened to keep the winning ticket for yourself? I walked past him into the living room. My legs felt steady. My hands didn't shake. I sat down in Marianne's old armchair, the one Connor had moved to the garage years ago, the one I'd quietly brought back into the house last month. I sat in it now, claiming my space. Connor followed me, standing over me, arms crossed. The power posture of a man used to getting his way. Here's what's going to happen, Theodore, he said. You're going to withdraw that claim today, because if you don't, we're going to make your life a living hell. I looked up at him. Is that a threat? It's a fact. We have resources now, real money. We can drag this out for years. Lawyers, depositions, appeals. How old are you? Theodore, 72. At your age, do you really think you'll live long enough to see the end of this? I didn't answer. Connor leaned down his hands on the armrests of my chair, his face close to mine. I've been documenting things, Theodore, concerning behaviors, memory lapses, the time you left the stove on, the bills you forgot to pay, the way you wander around talking to yourself. My chest tightened. I've never left the stove on. Connor smiled. Are you sure? Because I have notes that say otherwise. Dates, times, witnesses. That's a lie. Is it, or is it just the failing memory of an elderly man who can't take care of himself anymore? Connor straightened, putting his hands in his pockets. We can prove you're not competent, Theodore. We can prove you need a guardian. And when we do, every decision you make, including this lawsuit, goes away. I heard a sound at the doorway. Claire was standing there, her arms wrapped around herself, her face pale. Connor, she said quietly, stay out of this. Connor snapped, not even looking at her. Claire flinched, but she didn't leave. She just stood there watching, her eyes moving between Connor and me. I stood up slowly. My knees ached, but I didn't let it show. I looked Connor in the eye. This conversation is over, I said. Connor's smile widened. You're going to lose everything, Theodore. The money, your daughter, your dignity, all of it. I walked toward the door. As I passed Claire, I paused. She looked at me, and for just a moment I saw the little girl she used to be, the one who'd held my hand at Marianne's funeral. Then I kept walking. You can't win this, Connor called after me. I stopped at the threshold of the hallway and turned back. My dignity is mine, Connor. You can't take that. I went to my bedroom and closed the door. For a long time I sat on the edge of the bed, listening. I could hear Connor and Claire talking in low voices. Then the voices got louder. Claire was saying something I couldn't make out the words, and Connor cut her off, his tone sharp. Then I heard Claire crying. Connor's voice rose. He did this. Not us. He's the one tearing this family apart. I closed my eyes. At 9 o'clock, my phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Are you okay? I typed back. Yes. He threatened me. Competency hearings, guardianship. Her reply came immediately. Document everything. Write it down. Dates, times, exact words. I pulled out an old notebook from my desk drawer, one I'd used years ago for project notes, and started writing. Sunday, April 7th, 2024. 7:15 p.m. Connor confronted me in the living room, said he's been documenting concerning behaviors, claimed I left the stove on false, claimed I forgot to pay bills false, threatened to prove I'm not competent, threatened guardianship proceedings, said they could drag the lawsuit out for years. Claire was present, but said nothing. I wrote for 20 minutes, recording everything I could remember, Connor's exact words, his body language, the lies he'd told, the threats he'd made. When I finished, I stared at the page, and slowly a realization settled over me. Connor hadn't just started documenting things after the lottery win. He'd been planning this for a long time. Maybe months, maybe years. The notes he'd mentioned, the witnesses, those weren't real. But the fact that he'd thought to threaten me with them meant he'd been preparing. He'd been waiting for an opportunity to take control. The lottery win had just accelerated his timeline. I set the notebook on the nightstand and lay down. But I didn't sleep well. Every sound in the house made me tense. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a threat. When morning came, Monday, April 8th, I got up at dawn and made coffee. I sat at the kitchen table, the notebook in front of me, and waited. At 9 o'clock, my phone rang. The voice on the other end would change everything. The woman introduced herself as Janet Pierce from Columbia Bank. Mr. Marsh, I'm the assistant branch manager. I'm calling about a power of attorney filing. We received yesterday afternoon, bearing your name with Connor Blake, listed as your designated representative. I stood in the kitchen, the phone pressed to my ear, the floor tilting beneath me. I never filed a power of attorney. There was a pause. That's what we suspected. The signature didn't match the one we have on file for you. We rejected the application and flagged the account. Mr. Marsh, someone attempted to forge your signature. My hand tightened on the phone. Who submitted it? The name on the submission was Connor Blake. If this document had been accepted, it would have given him full legal authority over all your accounts, checking, savings, everything. He could have transferred funds, closed accounts, taken out loans in your name. I sank into a chair. My chest felt tight. I couldn't breathe. Connor hadn't just threatened me. He'd tried to steal everything, every dollar I had, my pension, the money Marianne and I had saved for 40 years. If the bank hadn't caught the forged signature, if they'd processed the paperwork, Connor would have cleaned me out before I even knew what happened. Mr. Marsh. Are you still there? Yes, I managed. I'm here. I'm emailing you a copy of the document right now, Janet said. You'll want to show it to your attorney and Mr. Marsh. You should file a police report. This is criminal fraud. I will. Thank you. I hung up and sat at the table staring at my phone. My hands were shaking. Connor had done this yesterday, Monday, the day after I filed the dispute claim. Less than 24 hours after our confrontation in the living room, he'd gone to the bank and tried to forge a power of attorney. Was this retaliation? Or had he been planning this all along? The fear that had been sitting in my chest for days began to shift. Slowly, it hardened into something else. Anger. At 9:15, I called Rachel. He tried to forge a power of attorney, I said, my voice shaking. The bank caught it. They rejected it. But he tried. Rachel was silent for a moment. Then she said, "That's criminal fraud. Forgery. This changes everything, Mr. Marsh." "What do I do?" "Call the bank back. Get that document. Email it to me immediately. Then go to the Bend Police Department and file a report. Today. Do not wait." Okay. This is good, Mr. Marsh. I know it doesn't feel good. But this is evidence. Hard evidence that Connor is willing to commit crimes to get what he wants. We can use this. I called the bank back. Janet confirmed she'd sent the email. At 10:30 it arrived. I opened it on my laptop, my heart pounding. The document was a standard power of attorney form. My name was typed at the top. Connor Blake's name was listed as the agent, and at the bottom, in careful practiced handwriting, was a signature that looked almost like mine. Almost. But it wasn't. The slant was wrong. The loop in the M was too wide. Connor had tried, he'd practiced, I could tell, but he hadn't quite gotten it right. I stared at the signature for a long time. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was deliberate, calculated. Connor had sat down somewhere, maybe in my own house, maybe at a coffee shop downtown, and practiced signing my name until he thought he had it right. Then he'd taken this form to the bank and lied. I forwarded the email to Rachel. Her reply came within minutes. "This is gold. See you at the mediation." That afternoon, I drove to the Bend Police Department. The building was small brick with a flagpole out front. I walked inside and told the officer at the desk I needed to file a report for attempted fraud. They assigned me to a detective named Morrison. He was in his 50s, gray-haired with a calm, patient manner. He listened while I explained everything, the lottery tickets, the dispute, the confrontation, and now the forged power of attorney. I showed him the email from the bank. Morrison took notes, asked questions, examined the document. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, and looked at me seriously. "Mr. Marsh, this is a felony. Forgery, attempted fraud. If we can prove Mr. Blake submitted this document knowing it was false, he could face criminal charges." "I want that on record," I said. Morrison nodded. "We'll open a case. I'll contact the bank, get their statement, pull the security footage if they have it. This is going to take time, but we'll follow up." He handed me a receipt with a case number printed at the top. Number 2024-BR-04751. "Keep this," he said. "And Mr. Marsh, be careful. If this man is willing to forge legal documents, there's no telling what else he might do." I folded the receipt and put it in my wallet right next to the lottery receipt. "Thank you," I said. I drove home slowly, the case number heavy in my pocket. When I pulled onto Ponderosa Lane, the house looked the same as it always did. The birch trees Marianne had planted swayed in the breeze. The porch light was on. Connor's car was in the driveway. But something had shifted. I wasn't just defending myself anymore. I was armed. I had filed the report. What I didn't tell the officer was this: Connor Blake should be careful with me now. Because I had proof he was willing to commit a crime. Connor came home that evening with flowers. Cheap supermarket flowers wrapped in cellophane. It was 6:30. I was sitting at the kitchen table drinking coffee when I heard his car pull into the driveway. The front door opened. Connor appeared in the kitchen doorway holding the bouquet like a peace offering. "Theo," he said. His voice was soft, conciliatory. "I think we got off on the wrong foot." I didn't say anything. I just looked at him. Connor set the flowers on the counter and pulled out a chair. "May I?" I nodded. He sat down across from me, his hands folded on the table. "I want to apologize. I was overwhelmed. The lottery win, the pressure, the legal stuff, it all got to me. I didn't mean the things I said." I sipped my coffee. "Which things?" "About the house. About competency hearings. I was angry. I wasn't thinking straight." He leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Theo, you're family. Claire and I, we don't want to fight with you. We want to make this work." I set my cup down slowly. "Make what work?" "All of it." Connor spread his hands. "Look, I know we've had our differences, but we can fix this. You stay here. This is still your house. We'll set up an account, $5,000 a month just for you. All you have to do is withdraw the dispute claim." I didn't react. I just watched him. "In exchange for what?" I asked. "In exchange for acknowledging that the lottery ticket was a gift," Connor said smoothly. "You gave it to Claire. We won. And in return, we take care of you. $5,000 a month, Theo. That's $60,000 a year. Tax-free. It's more than your pension. You could travel. Fix up the house. Do whatever you want." He smiled. It looked almost genuine. "When we could be a family again," Connor continued. "Sunday dinners, game nights, just like Marianne used to do." My jaw tightened. "Don't," I said quietly. "Don't what?" "Don't talk about my wife." Connor blinked as if surprised. "I'm just saying, you threatened me." I said, my voice steady. "You tried to forge a power of attorney to steal my money, and now you think a few flowers and a monthly payoff will fix that." Connor's smile faltered. Just for a second, I saw something flicker in his eyes, something cold and calculating. Then he leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. "You really want to fight us?" he said. His voice had changed. The warmth was gone. "I'm not fighting anyone," I said. "I'm defending what's mine." "What's yours?" Connor let out a short, bitter laugh. You're 72 years old, Theo. You live in the past. You cling to this house because it reminds you of a woman who's gone. Marianne is gone. She's been gone for 8 years, and you're still sitting here pretending she's coming back. I stood up. My chair scraped against the floor. Get out, I said. Connor stood too. He was taller than me, and he knew it. He looked down at me with something close to contempt. You could have had an easy life, he said. 5,000 a month. No worries, no stress. But you'd rather die poor and alone, clinging to your pride. I'd rather die with my dignity intact. Connor stared at me for a long moment. Then he shook his head. You're going to lose everything, he said. The money, your daughter, this house, all of it. And when you do, don't say I didn't try to help you. He walked to the door, then paused and looked back. You know what your problem is, Theo. You think being stubborn makes you strong, but it doesn't. It just makes you pathetic. He left. The door slammed behind him. I stood in the kitchen listening to his footsteps fade down the hallway. Then I picked up the flowers, the cheap, cellophane-wrapped supermarket flowers, and dropped them in the trash. I sat back down at the table. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from anger. Connor had tried threats. That hadn't worked. So he'd tried manipulation, bribery, emotional blackmail. And when that didn't work, he'd shown his true face again. The cold, cruel man who thought money could buy anything, who thought I was weak enough to be bought. But he was wrong. I thought about what he'd said, about Marianne, about me clinging to the past. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was clinging. Maybe this house, these memories, this life, maybe it was all just a way to hold on to something that was gone, but it was mine. My past, my memories, my home. And I'd be damned if I let Connor Blake take it from me. I went to bed that night and lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling. I knew Connor would try something else. Men like him always did. When threats didn't work, when manipulation didn't work, they found a new angle, a new weapon. But for the first time since Marianne passed away, I remembered who I was. Theodore Marsh, engineer, builder, survivor. I'd built bridges that held up under pressure. I'd built a house that had weathered 36 years of storms. I'd built a life with Marianne that Connor could never understand and never take away. And I wasn't going to let him break me now. The following Tuesday, someone knocked on my door. A firm, official knock. The kind that makes your stomach drop before you even turn the handle. I opened it to find a woman standing on my porch, holding a clipboard and a county ID badge clipped to her jacket. She was in her early 40s with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and tired eyes that had seen too much. Mr. Theodore Marsh, she asked. Yes. My name is Lisa Hernandez. I'm an investigator with Deschutes County Adult Protective Services. We received a report regarding your welfare. I need to conduct an assessment to determine whether you're safe and capable of caring for yourself. My stomach twisted. Connor. Who filed the report? I asked. I'm not permitted to disclose that, Lisa said. May I come in? I wanted to say no. I wanted to shut the door and call Rachel, but I knew that would only make things worse. Refusing would look suspicious, like I had something to hide. Of course, I said, stepping aside. Lisa walked into the living room and took a seat on the couch. She set her clipboard on the coffee table and pulled out a pen. Mr. Marsh, I'm going to ask you some questions. Just answer as best you can. There's no right or wrong here. I just need to understand your current situation. I sat down in Marianne's armchair. My hands were steady, but my heart was pounding. What's today's date? Lisa asked. Tuesday, April 16th, 2024. And who's the current president of the United States? I answered. She asked more questions. Where did I live? How long had I lived here? What did I do for work? Did I have any medical conditions? Did I take any medications? I answered everything clearly, precisely, the way I used to present project reports to the state board. Mr. Marsh, the report we received mentioned memory loss and confusion. Have you experienced anything like that? No, I said firmly. Never. Do you manage your own finances? Yes. I pay my bills on time. I balance my checkbook every month. I've been doing it for 40 years. Do you prepare your own meals? Yes. And you live here with your daughter and her husband? They live here, I corrected. This is my house. I invited them to stay 8 years ago when they were having financial difficulties. Lisa made notes. I couldn't read her expression. Mr. Marsh, would you mind if I took a look around, just to get a sense of your living environment? Go ahead. We walked through the house together. Lisa checked the kitchen first. The counters were clean. The refrigerator was stocked with fresh food, milk, eggs, vegetables, leftovers in labeled containers. The stove was spotless. Not a single burner left on not a single sign of neglect. We moved to the bathroom. Clean. Organized. Towels folded. Medicine cabinet tidy with my blood pressure medication neatly lined up, each bottle labeled with the date. Then my bedroom. The bed was made. Clothes put away. Marianne's photo on the nightstand, the lottery ticket still hidden in the drawer below. Finally, we went out back to my workshop. Lisa stepped inside and paused. The tools were hung on pegboards, each in its place. The workbench was clean, sawdust swept. On the shelf sat a row of small wooden objects I'd been making over the years, birdhouses, boxes, a small carved bowl. Lisa picked up one of the birdhouses and examined it. This is beautiful work. You still do woodworking. It keeps my hands busy, I said. She set it down gently. Mr. Marsh, I've been doing this job for 12 years. I can tell the difference between someone who needs help and someone who's being targeted. You're not the person described in that report. Relief washed over me. So you'll close the case. I still need to interview your neighbors and your family members, Lisa said. But based on what I've seen today, there's no indication that you're unable to care for yourself. Your home is clean, your mind is sharp, your physical health seems good. She paused at the door and handed me her business card. If you ever do need help, real help, call me. Thank you. Lisa left. I closed the door and leaned against it, my hands finally starting to shake. I'd held it together during the interview, answered every question, passed every test. But now alone in the quiet of my own house, the humiliation hit me. I'd had to prove my competency. In my own home, I'd had to show a stranger that I could take care of myself, that I wasn't confused or dangerous or incapable. At 72 years old, I'd been treated like a child who couldn't be trusted. And Connor had done this. He'd filed that report. I knew it. He'd called Adult Protective Services and told them I was incompetent, unsafe, a danger to myself. He'd weaponized the system against me, hoping they'd declare me unfit and appoint a guardian. Him. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. My hands were still shaking. Lisa had said she'd interview Connor next, and I knew exactly what he would say. He'd be calm, concerned, earnest. He'd tell her about my memory lapses, my confusion, the time I supposedly left the stove on. He'd paint a picture of a fragile old man who couldn't take care of himself anymore, and he'd sound so believable. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I felt a different kind of fear. Not the fear of losing money or losing the house, but the fear of losing my independence. my autonomy. The right to live my own life in my own home on my own terms. That was what Connor was really trying to take. Not just my money, my freedom. Lisa interviewed Bernard and Maureen the next morning. Bernard called me as soon as she left. "That son of a bitch tried to get you declared incompetent." His voice was loud, furious. "Lisa just left. She asked us 100 questions about you, your memory, your habits, whether we'd ever seen you confused or unsafe." "What did you tell her?" "I told her you're sharper than half the engineers still working out there." Maureen told her Connor Blake should be ashamed of himself. "We told her the truth, Theo, that you're fine, that this whole thing is garbage." I closed my eyes. "Thank you." She asked if we'd be willing to testify if it came to that. I said absolutely. Bernard paused. "You're not alone in this, Theo. You hear me? I hear you." That afternoon, there was another knock on my door. This time it was Pastor Joyce Morgan. Joyce was 67, recently retired from First Community Church, with silver hair and a calm, steady presence that had comforted our congregation for 30 years. She was also a close friend of Bernard and Maureen. "Theodore," she said, giving me a hug. "Maureen called me. I wanted you to know you have support from the church, from the community." She came inside and sat at the kitchen table. From her bag, she pulled out a thick folder. "I've known you for 16 years, Joyce said. "Ever since Marianne and I served together on the missions committee. You were a devoted husband, a loving father, a good neighbor. And when Marianne passed, you carried that grief with dignity." She opened the folder and spread out 10 handwritten letters on the table. "These are from members of First Community, people who know you, people who are willing to testify on your behalf if needed." I stared at the letters. My throat tightened. I picked one up. It was from a couple I barely knew, Tom and Susan Reed, who lived 2 streets over. They wrote that they'd seen me at the hardware store every Saturday for years, always polite, always coherent, always helpful when someone needed advice on a project. They offered to help in any way they could. Tears welled up in my eyes. Why would they do this? Joyce reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Because Marianne was loved. And so are you." The next morning, Thursday, April 18th, Lisa called. "Mr. Marsh, I'm closing your case. My conclusion is that the report was unsubstantiated. There's no evidence of cognitive decline or self-neglect. You're fully competent to manage your own affairs." Relief flooded through me. "Thank you." "I interviewed your son-in-law yesterday," Lisa continued. "He made several allegations about your memory and confusion. Not one of them was corroborated. In fact, everyone I spoke to said the opposite." "What happens now?" "I'm noting in my report that this appears to be a malicious filing related to a financial dispute. If Mr. Blake files another report without legitimate cause, there will be legal consequences." I sat down, the phone pressed to my ear. I felt relief and anger. Connor had tried to take my freedom, my autonomy, and he'd failed. "Thank you, Lisa. Take care of yourself, Mr. Marsh." That evening, Bernard and Maureen invited me over for dinner. But when I arrived, I found it wasn't just the 3 of us. Pastor Joyce was there. So were Jim and Carol Patterson, neighbors from down the street I'd known for years. "We thought you could use some company," Maureen said, ushering me inside. The table was set with Maureen's best dishes. She'd made pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, and homemade rolls, the kind of meal Marianne used to make on Sundays. We sat around the table, and for the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't felt since Marianne passed away. I felt seen. Bernard raised his glass. "To Theodore Marsh, a man who won't let some punk kid steal his house." Everyone laughed. We clinked glasses. We ate. We talked about everything and nothing, the weather, the Blazers, Joyce's new grandchild, Jim's retirement plans. No one brought up the lottery or Connor or the investigation. They just let me be a person, a friend, a neighbor. At one point, I looked around the table and felt my chest tighten with emotion. When Marianne passed away, I said quietly, I was lonely. When Claire and Connor moved in, I thought that would change. But I was still lonely, because they didn't see me. They looked through me. I paused, swallowing hard. But you see me. You really see me. Maureen wiped her eyes. Bernard cleared his throat and said gruffly, all right. Eat your pot roast. I stayed until late helping Maureen wash dishes while Bernard and Jim argued about baseball. When I finally walked home, the stars were out bright and sharp in the high desert sky. That night, I slept better than I had in months. The next morning, Friday, April 19th, I woke to an email from Rachel. Mediation has been scheduled. Thursday, May 2nd, 10 a.m. Oregon Lottery Commission Headquarters, Salem. Be ready. This is it. I read the email 3 times. Then I stood up, poured myself coffee, and looked out the window at the birch trees Marianne had planted 36 years ago. This was it. The moment everything would be decided. I wasn't afraid. The week before mediation felt like the week before a trial. Rachel called me every day. Monday, April 22nd, she explained the mediation process. It's not a courtroom, but it's formal. There will be a mediator neutral professional. Connor's lawyer will present his case first. Then I'll present ours. They'll ask you questions. Answer honestly, clearly, and briefly. Don't ramble. Don't get emotional. Mr. Morton, that's Connor's lawyer. He's going to try to make you look bad. Old, bitter, greedy. Don't let him rattle you. I'll try. You'll do fine, Mr. Marsh. Just tell the truth. Tuesday we practiced. Rachel ran me through mock questions over the phone. Why did you give the ticket to Claire? Because she's my daughter. It was a small gift. I didn't think about winning. It was just worth $2. Did you tell her it was a gift? I said, here, you can have this. Did you expect her to give it back if it won? I paused. No, I didn't think about it at all. It was spontaneous. Good. That's the truth. Stick to that. Wednesday, we reviewed documents. Rachel went through everything. We had the receipt from the Quick Stop, showing I'd purchased both tickets in one transaction, my bank statement confirming the debit card charge, the forged power of attorney with Connor's name on it, the police report, the APS investigators' conclusion that the elder abuse report was malicious filing. Stanley Morton knows about all of this, Rachel said. The forgery, the APS claim. I'd bet money he's not comfortable representing Connor anymore. But he's stuck. He filed the claim. He has to see it through. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the dark ceiling, my mind spinning. Claire was my daughter. If I won this mediation, she would lose $95 million. She'd walk away with nothing, and she would hate me for it. Maybe forever. Was it worth it? I got up and walked through the house in the dark. Through the living room where Marianne and I used to sit and watch old movies. Through the kitchen where she'd hum while she cooked. Through the hallway past the framed photo of the 3 of us. Me, Marianne, and Claire taken when Claire was 10, all of us smiling at the beach. These walls, I'd built them. These floors, I'd laid them. This house. It was Marianne and me, our hands, our sweat, our dreams. Connor had told me I had to leave. I went back to the bedroom and sat on Marianne's side of the bed, the way I always did when I needed to think. This house is you, Marie, I whispered into the dark. It's you and me. And Connor said I had to leave. My own house. The one we built. I closed my eyes. I'm not doing this for the money. I'm doing it for the principle. For the right to live in my own home. For my dignity. I imagined her voice the way I always did. Steady. Kind. Strong. You've never backed down from what's right, Theodore. Don't start now. Thursday morning, May 1st. I woke at 5:30. I lay there for a moment staring at the ceiling, then got up and took a shower. I dressed carefully. A white button-down shirt. Dark slacks. The same jacket I'd worn to Marianne's funeral. It still fit. At 6 o'clock, there was a knock on the back door. I opened it to find Bernard standing there with a paper bag. Maureen made waffles, he said, handing me the bag. Figured you'd need something in your stomach. I took the bag. Thank you. Bernard looked at me seriously. You ready? No, I said. But I'm going anyway. Bernard smiled. That's courage, Theo. Courage isn't not being afraid. It's doing the thing even when you are. I ate one of Maureen's waffles standing at the kitchen counter. Then I grabbed my keys, my wallet, the folder Rachel had given me with all the documents, and walked out to my truck. Bernard was still standing in his driveway. He raised his hand. I raised mine back. I pulled out onto Ponderosa Lane and headed west. The drive to Salem took 2.5 hours. Highway 26 winds through the Cascade Mountains past forests and rivers and small logging towns. I turned off the radio. I needed the silence. I thought about Marianne, about the day we'd stood on this empty lot in 1988, just dirt and sagebrush, and she'd said, "This is it, Theodore. This is where we're going to build our life." I thought about Claire, about holding her in my arms the day she was born, about teaching her to ride a bike, about the way she used to fall asleep on my shoulder when she was small. I thought about Connor, about the way he'd looked at me in the kitchen and said, "You're pathetic." And I thought about what I'd built. Not just the house, but a life, a foundation, something solid, something that should have held. Marianne used to say, if the foundation is strong, the structure will stand. I'd built a strong foundation. But Connor had spent 8 years chipping away at it, and now we were going to find out if it could still hold. I reached Salem at 9:30. I pulled into the parking lot across from the Oregon Lottery Commission building and sat there for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, trying to steady my breathing. Then I saw Rachel's car pull in. She parked next to me, got out, and walked over. She knocked on my window. I rolled it down. "Ready?" she asked. "As ready as I'll ever be." She smiled. "Then let's go get your house back." The Oregon Lottery Commission building sits on Liberty Street in downtown Salem, glass and concrete, nothing like justice. Rachel and I arrived at 9:45. We parked in the lot across the street and walked through the front doors into a lobby with polished floors and fluorescent lights. A security guard checked our IDs, waved us through a metal detector, and pointed us toward the elevators. "7th floor," Rachel said quietly. We rode up in silence. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. I'd spent the last 2 weeks preparing for this, reviewing documents with Rachel, rehearsing answers to questions, going over the timeline again and again. I knew the facts. I knew the truth. The elevator doors opened. The 7th floor waiting area was small and sterile, gray carpet, a few chairs, a water cooler in the corner. And across the room, sitting in those chairs, were Connor, Claire, and their lawyer. Connor was wearing a new suit. Expensive. Tailored. Navy blue with a crisp white shirt. He sat with one leg crossed over the other, his arms stretched along the back of the chair next to him. The posture of a man who thought he'd already won. Claire sat 2 chairs away from him, her hands folded in her lap, staring at her phone. She looked pale, tired. Standing near them was Stanley Morton, 54, slick gray hair, expensive watch-leather briefcase open on the chair beside him as he reviewed his notes. The elevator chimed. All three of them looked up. Connor didn't stand. He just looked at me, his expression unreadable, and stayed exactly where he was. A power move, a statement. Claire glanced at me, just for a second. Then she looked back down at her phone. That hurt more than anything Connor had done. Rachel's hand touched my elbow. "This way, Theo." We walked to the opposite side of the waiting area and sat down. 10 feet separated us from Connor and his lawyer. It felt like miles. At 9:55, the conference room door opened. A young woman in a lottery commission badge stepped out. "We're ready." Connor stood first. He walked into the room like he was claiming territory. Claire followed quietly, her head down. Stanley Morton nodded professionally at Rachel, gathered his briefcase, and walked in. Rachel and I entered last. The conference room was long and narrow, with a table down the center and chairs on either side. Windows overlooked the street below. A whiteboard hung on one wall. Bottles of water and a box of tissues sat in the middle of the table. At the head of the table sat a man in his 60s with gray hair, bifocals, and a calm, measured expression. He stood when we entered. "Good morning," he said. "I'm Howard Phillips, the mediator assigned to this case. Please have a seat." Connor, Claire, and Stanley took seats on the right side of the table. Rachel and I took seats on the left. We faced each other directly with Howard at the head between us. I was acutely aware of every movement. Claire sat 2 chairs down from Connor, still not looking at me. Connor leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, watching. Howard adjusted his glasses and opened a folder. "Let me explain the process. This is an informal mediation to resolve a dispute over ownership of Oregon Lottery, ticket number 471-8823-C, purchased on April 3, 2024. My role is to facilitate discussion and help the parties reach a resolution. I don't have the authority to force an outcome, but my findings will be reported to the Commission, and they carry significant weight. Everything said here is confidential unless both parties agree otherwise." He looked at each of us in turn. "Does everyone understand?" We all nodded. "Good." Howard set down his pen and folded his hands. "Let's begin. Mr. Morton, your client filed the claim first. You may present your opening statement." Stanley Morton stood. He buttoned his jacket, cleared his throat, and looked directly at Howard. "Thank you, Mr. Phillips. I represent Mr. Connor Blake and Miss Claire Marsh in this matter." He gestured toward Connor and Claire. Claire didn't look up. "The facts here are straightforward," Stanley continued. "On April 3rd, Mr. Theodore Marsh purchased 2 Powerball lottery tickets at a convenience store in Bend, Oregon. He brought one of those tickets home and gave it to his daughter Claire as a gift. Not a loan, not a conditional transfer. A gift. There were no strings attached, no expectations of return. Under Oregon law, that is the legal definition of a gift." Stanley paused, letting the words settle. 3 weeks later, that ticket won $95 million. Ms. Marsh checked the numbers, confirmed the win, and informed her family. At no point during those 3 weeks did Mr. Marsh express any interest in the ticket he had given away. Not until he learned its value. Stanley's voice was smooth, confident. Oregon law recognizes informal gifts of personal property. A lottery ticket is personal property. When Mr. Marsh handed that ticket to his daughter and said, "Here, you can have this," he transferred ownership. The fact that he now regrets his generosity, the fact that he wishes he'd kept it for himself, does not negate the gift. He looked at Howard. "We are asking the Commission to recognize Ms. Claire Marsh as the rightful owner of that ticket and to allow her to claim the prize. Stanley sat down. Connor gave a small, satisfied nod. Claire continued staring at the table, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Howard made a note. Then he looked across the table at Rachel. "Ms. Kemp, your opening statement." Rachel stood up, and I knew this was the moment everything would be decided. I had practiced this story with Rachel dozens of times, but sitting across from Claire, every rehearsed word vanished. I could only speak the truth. Rachel stood, her posture calm but commanding. "Mr. Morton has described part of the truth," she began. "What he's left out are the facts that matter most." She reached into her briefcase and placed 2 documents on the table in front of Howard Phillips. "This," Rachel said, tapping the first page, "is the receipt from Quick Stop Highway 97, Bend, Oregon. Date April 3rd, 2024. Time 2:17 p.m. 2 Powerball tickets, paid by debit card, in the name of Theodore Marsh." She slid the second document forward. "This is Mr. Marsh's bank statement showing a $4 charge from Quick Stop on the same date and time." Howard leaned forward, examining both pages through his bifocals. Rachel continued, her voice steady. "Mr. Marsh bought both tickets. He paid for both tickets. Under Oregon law, he is the legal owner of both tickets." Stanley Morton shifted in his seat. Connor's jaw tightened. "Mr. Marsh gave 1 ticket to his daughter informally?" Rachel went on. "A $2 paper slip. At the time, it had no more value than a greeting card. But a lottery ticket worth $95 million is not a casual gift. It is a substantial asset, and Oregon lottery regulations require clear documentation in cases of ownership dispute. Mr. Marsh has that documentation. Mr. Blake does not." Howard looked at me. "Mr. Marsh, can you confirm that you purchased these tickets on April 3rd? "Yes, sir," I said. My voice was quieter than I'd hoped, but it was steady. "And you bought 2 tickets in one transaction?" "Yes, 2 tickets. $4 total." "Why 2? I glanced at Rachel. She nodded slightly. "Because my friend Bernard dared me to buy one," I said. "I thought if I'm buying one, I might as well buy 2. It was just $4. I didn't think about winning. I just did it." Howard made a note. "And you gave 1 ticket to your daughter?" "Yes." "Why?" I looked at Claire. She was staring at the table, her hands folded tightly in her lap. "Because she's my daughter," I said. "It was a small thing, a $2 ticket. I wanted to share it with her." Howard's expression softened slightly. "Mr. Marsh, why did you file a dispute with the Lottery Commission?" I took a breath. "Because 3 days after my daughter's ticket won, her husband told me I had to leave. He said the house I built 36 years ago with my own hands with my late wife wasn't my home anymore. He said the $95 million wasn't mine, and he tried to take everything." Stanley leaned forward. "Mr. Marsh, you're 72 years old. How clearly do you remember the events of April 3rd? Rachel's hand touched my arm gently, a signal to stay calm. "I remember it perfectly," I said. "I drove to Quick Stop with Bernard Sullivan. The owner, Dave Wilson, sold me the tickets. I paid with my debit card. I have the receipt. I remember everything." Stanley sat back, his expression sour. Rachel reached into her briefcase again. This time she pulled out a thicker envelope. "There's one more thing," she said, her tone sharpening. "On April 8th, Mr. Blake submitted a power of attorney to Columbia Bank, claiming authority over Mr. Marsh's accounts. She placed a letter on the table. This is correspondence from the bank dated April 24th. The bank rejected the document because the signature did not match Mr. Marsh's on file. They flagged it as possible fraud. Howard's eyebrows rose. He reached for the letter. Rachel wasn't finished. She placed a second document beside it. This is a police report filed by Mr. Marsh with the Bend Police Department on April 9th. Case number 2024-BR-04751. The report documents an attempt to commit financial fraud through forgery. The room went silent. Howard looked at Connor. Mr. Blake, do you have a response to this? Connor's face had gone pale. That was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding, Rachel cut in her voice hard. You forged a legal document in my client's name to seize control of his bank accounts. That's not a misunderstanding. That's fraud. And it suggests a pattern of behavior using manipulation, coercion, and now forgery to steal my client's assets. Howard removed his glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. Mr. Morton, were you aware of this? Stanley Morton looked genuinely rattled. No, I was not. Howard replaced his glasses and fixed Connor with a long stare. Mr. Blake, forging a power of attorney is a felony in Oregon. If this matter proceeds beyond today, you may face criminal charges. Connor opened his mouth, but Stanley grabbed his arm. We need a moment, Stanley said quickly, and he practically dragged Connor out of the room. The door clicked shut behind them. I sat there, my hands folded on the table, my heart pounding. Across from me, Claire finally lifted her head. Her eyes were red. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the letter from the bank, at the police report, at the evidence of what her husband had done. And for the first time in 8 years, I saw my daughter cry. Still watching Theodore's battle comment family, so I know you're here for the full story. Quick note, this narrative includes fictional elements to amplify the message and emotional journey. If you'd rather skip the rest, you're welcome to stop here. But the next part, Claire's breakdown, is the most powerful moment yet. You won't want to miss it. When we returned from the recess, Claire was still sitting there, crumpled tissues clutched in her hands. It was 12:45. Her eyes were red and swollen. Connor sat beside her, his jaw tight, his arms crossed. Stanley Morton was nowhere to be seen. He'd stepped out to make a call. Howard Phillips cleared his throat. Mrs. Marsh, he said gently. I'd like to hear from you. What happened when your father gave you that ticket? Claire's voice was barely audible. I don't know what to say. Howard's tone remained soft. Take your time. Do you remember? Yes. Did he say anything? Claire swallowed. Dad said he'd bought a lottery ticket and that it was silly. He was smiling. It was the first time I'd seen him smile in months. I felt my chest tighten. Howard nodded. Did he say the prize money would be yours? No, Claire said quietly. He just handed it to me. I said, thanks, Dad. That was all. Howard made a note. When the ticket won, what happened? Claire's voice cracked. Connor checked the numbers. He got so excited. He said we were rich. He started making calls right away. And your father? Dad just stood there, Claire whispered. He looked lost. Connor shifted in his seat. Howard shot him a sharp glance, then turned back to Claire. Mrs. Marsh, answer me directly. Answer honestly. Don't look at anyone else. Did your father ever mistreat you? In those 8 years, did he ever make you feel unwelcome? Did he ever try to hurt you or manipulate you? There was a long silence. Then Claire's tears began to fall again. No. Howard leaned forward. No. Claire shook her head. Dad he never did anything but kindness. Connor opened his mouth. Claire. But Claire's voice rose louder than I'd heard it in years. Dad never said he didn't want us there. He never complained. Not once. She turned to Howard, her words coming faster now. Connor told me Dad resented us. Connor said Dad only let us stay out of obligation. Connor said Dad was talking badly about us behind our backs to the neighbors. Her voice broke. But Dad never said those things. Connor said Dad said them. And I believed him. I believed Connor instead of believing my own father. Connor's face went pale. That's not... Claire whirled on him. You told me Dad wanted us gone. You said he was just too polite to say it. I was trying to protect. Protect me from what? Claire shouted. From my father who loved me, who took us in when we had nothing. The room felt electric. I wiped my eyes, staring at my daughter. Claire turned back to Howard, her voice shaking. My father never wanted us to leave. Connor did. Connor wanted to push him out. And I let him do it. Connor stood abruptly. This is ridiculous. Claire, we're leaving. Mr. Blake. Howard said sharply, sit down. We don't have to. I'm not going with you. Claire said, her voice steady now. Connor froze. What? I'm not leaving with you. Not anymore. Stitozi. Connor's face flushed red. Claire, think about, I have thought about it. For weeks. I'm done. At that moment, the door opened and Stanley Morton stepped back in. He glanced around the room, taking in Claire's tear-streaked face, Connor's rage, and Howard's stern expression. He set his briefcase on the table. Mr. Phillips, I need to withdraw from this case. Effective immediately. Connor's head snapped toward him. You can't do that. I can and I will, Stanley said flatly. Then given the evidence of fraud and this testimony, I cannot ethically continue. He turned to Howard. I apologize for the disruption. Then he picked up his briefcase, looked at Connor and said, Good luck, Mr. Blake. You're going to need it. And he walked out. The door clicked shut behind him. Silence. Howard looked at Connor. Mr. Blake, do you wish to continue without counsel? Connor stood there furious, breathing hard. This is garbage. That old man is manipulating. Sit down. Howard set his voice like steel or leave. Connor looked at Claire. Claire, we're going. Now. Claire didn't move. Claire. She spoke quietly. No. Connor stared at her, his face twisting with rage. Then he turned to me, his eyes full of venom. This isn't over, he said. And he stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The room fell silent again. Howard exhaled slowly. Mrs. Marsh, are you all right? Claire shook her head. No, but I will be. Howard looked at me, then at Rachel. I'm ending this mediation here. I'll issue my findings within 5 business days. But I think we all know where this is heading. He turned to me. Mr. Marsh, based on the evidence, the purchase receipt, the lack of transfer documentation, the fraud, conspiracy, and Mrs. Marsh's testimony, I will be recommending that the Commission recognize your ownership of the disputed ticket. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Rachel squeezed my shoulder. Howard stood. This meeting is adjourned. The room began to empty. Howard gathered his files and left. Rachel stepped outside to make a call, and then it was just the two of us, me and Claire, sitting across from each other. Neither of us spoke. Finally, Claire stood. She walked around the table slowly, her hands trembling. She stopped in front of me, and she said, "Dad, I'm sorry." Claire and I stood in that conference room, and it felt like an hour, but it was probably only 3 minutes. She cried. I cried. She said she was sorry again. I said I knew. Rachel knocked gently on the door. "We need to go." Claire drove her own car. I drove mine. I didn't know if I would ever see her again. I left Salem at 2 o'clock, took Highway 22 east toward home. 3 hours. The afternoon sun was bright and hard on my eyes. I thought about Claire's face, about Connor's rage, about Howard's words. I turned the radio off. I needed silence. Halfway home, my phone rang through the car's hands-free system. "Bernard, how'd it go?" he asked. I swallowed. I think I won." "And Claire," my voice broke. "She apologized. She broke down. She told the truth." There was a pause. Then Bernard said quietly, "Good, Theo. I got home at 5 o'clock. Connor's truck was in the driveway. Claire's sedan was parked beside it. I sat in my car for a moment, gathering myself. Then I went inside. Connor was upstairs in the bedroom. I could hear him moving around, the door closed. Claire was in the kitchen, her back turned to me, standing at the sink. I stopped in the doorway. "Claire." She froze. Her shoulders went rigid. "I can't," she said, her voice barely audible. "Not yet. I'm sorry." And then she walked past me, head down, and went upstairs. I stood there alone in the kitchen, listening to the sound of footsteps overhead. Then I heard voices. Connor's sharp and angry, Claire's quieter, breaking into sobs. I thought about going up there. Thought about knocking on the door, demanding to talk to my daughter. But I didn't. It wasn't my place anymore. The next morning, Friday, Connor left the house at 8. He didn't come back until after 10 that night. I assumed he was meeting with a new lawyer or planning something. I didn't ask. That afternoon, I was in the workshop, sanding the legs of a small table I'd been working on, when I saw a piece of paper slide under the door. I set down the sandpaper and picked it up. It was folded once. The handwriting was Claire's. "Dad, I'm sorry. I don't know how to face you. I don't know how to fix what I did. I'm scared. But I need you to know I love you. I always have. Claire." I sat down on the workbench and held that note in my hands. And I cried. Saturday and Sunday crawled by. The house felt like a minefield. Connor avoided me completely once we passed each other in the hallway. He looked at me with pure hatred, but he said nothing. I saw Claire twice. The first time was in the upstairs hall. She stopped when she saw me. We looked at each other for a long moment. Then she whispered, "Hi, Dad," and hurried past. The second time I glanced out the window and saw her sitting in her car in the driveway, her face in her hands, crying. I wanted to go to her. I wanted to help. But I didn't know how. Bernard came over on Saturday afternoon. He brought a loaf of Maureen's banana bread. "You holding up?" he asked. I shrugged. I lived with them for 8 years. Now I don't know how to talk to them. Bernard nodded. "Connor's done. But Claire, give her time, Theo." On Sunday, I did something I hadn't done since Marianne's funeral. I went to church. First Community Church was the same as I remembered it. Same wooden pews, same stained glass windows, same smell of old hymnals and wood polish. Pastor Joyce saw me as I was leaving after the service. She walked over, her face warm. "I heard the mediation went well," she said. "I think so," I said. "I'll know for sure this week." And Claire. I looked down. She's struggling. Joyce put a hand on my arm. She'll get through it. She knows the truth now. That's the hardest part. I went home and spent the rest of the day in the workshop carving a small wooden cross. I didn't know who it was for. Maybe Marianne. Maybe myself. Monday morning, I woke up at 5. I hadn't slept much. I made coffee, ate a piece of toast, sat at the kitchen table, and waited. The phone didn't ring. Tuesday, Wednesday. Still nothing. Thursday morning, May 9th, I woke at 5 again. I showered, dressed, made more coffee, stared at the phone. At 10:15, it rang. Rachel. I picked up on the second ring. Hello? Theo. Her voice was calm, but I could hear the smile in it. We won. I sat down hard in the kitchen chair. Rachel. Howard issued his findings this morning. The commission accepted his recommendation. The ruling is in your favor. Connor's claim is rejected. You are recognized as the legal owner of both tickets. I couldn't speak. Both tickets, I finally managed. Both. There was no documentation of transfer. No contract, no signed agreement, nothing. Theo, you're getting $95 million. I sat there completely numb, staring at the wall. $95 million. Both tickets. I had won, Rachel explained. You can submit the winning ticket to begin the official claims process. 11 days of verification, and then you'll receive $95 million, which comes to $47.5 million after taxes. I sat there, phone pressed to my ear, trying to make sense of the number. Rachel continued. You also need to send formal eviction notices. Oregon law requires 60 days notice. 60 days, I repeated. I'll draft them today. You send them when you're ready. That afternoon, Rachel emailed the notices. I printed 2 copies, one for Connor, one for Claire, and set them on my desk. I stared at them for an hour. Bernard called. Did you send them? Not yet. What are you waiting for? I don't know. On Tuesday, May 14th, I did it. I couldn't face them directly. I just couldn't. So I left the 2 notices on the kitchen table, each name written on the outside of an envelope, and I drove to Bernard's house. I came back 2 hours later. Connor's truck was gone. The notices were gone. And there was a hole in the living room wall. Connor had punched it. Marianne's framed photograph, the one that used to sit on the mantel, had been knocked to the floor. The glass was shattered. I picked it up with shaking hands. Bernard had been right to tell me to leave. Upstairs, the bedroom door was closed. I knocked. Claire. Her voice was quiet. Come in, Dad. I opened the door. Claire was sitting on the bed, an open suitcase beside her clothes folded neatly in stacks. He's gone, she said. Staying at a motel, he said, a lot of things I don't want to repeat. Are you okay? No, but I'm not hurt. She looked at me. 60 days. Oregon law requires it. I'm sorry, Claire. She shook her head. Don't apologize. You have every right. She paused. I'll be out in 2 weeks. Connor's getting his stuff tomorrow. I just need a few days to figure out where I'm going. You can stay the full 60 if you need to, I said. Claire shook her head. I can't stay here. Not after what I did. I wanted to say so many things, but I couldn't find the words. Okay, I said. The next day, Wednesday the 15th, Rachel and I drove to Salem. The Oregon Lottery Commission office was on the 3rd floor of a gray government building. The process was formal. EID verification ticket submission paperwork in triplicate. The clerk, a middle-aged woman with reading glasses, looked up and smiled. Congratulations, Mr. Marsh. Your claim will be processed within the next 11 business days. We'll contact you for final disbursement. She handed me a receipt. Official claim code. $95 million. Minus taxes, $47.5 million. Life-changing money. But it didn't feel real. Rachel asked me in the parking lot. How do you feel? Empty, I said. That feeling will pass. Give yourself time. She paused. I'm going to introduce you to Caroline Fisher, a financial advisor I trust. You'll need accounts, investments, estate planning. I felt overwhelmed. One step at a time. Driving home, I thought about what Marianne would say. Don't let money change who you are. I whispered, I won't, Marie. I promise. The next morning, Thursday the 16th, a moving truck pulled into the driveway at 10 o'clock. Connor had hired it. I stayed in the workshop and watched through the window. Connor was directing the movers, aggressively barking orders, gesturing angrily. They carried out furniture boxes, the TV, the sofa, the kitchen table. By afternoon, the truck was full. Connor walked to the workshop door. He didn't knock. He just stood there and said through the glass, You think you won, but you didn't. You lost your daughter. You'll die alone in this house with your money. That's what you deserve. Then he turned and walked away. The truck rolled out of the driveway. Connor's car followed. Gone. I stood at the workshop door, and the house felt quieter. A strange relief washed over me. Over the next few days, Claire was still there, packing slowly. We passed each other in the hallway. Awkward good mornings, stiff good nights. Not much conversation, but we were polite. 3 evenings after Connor left, I was cooking dinner. Pasta, nothing fancy. Claire came downstairs. Smells good, Dad. There's plenty, I said. If you want. She hesitated. Yes, thank you. We ate at the kitchen table. It was quiet, but not hostile. Dad. Yes. I'm filing for divorce. I called a lawyer today. Good. She looked down at her plate. I'm going to rent my own apartment. Start over. Maybe find a job. I haven't worked in 8 years. You'll manage, I said. You're strong. I don't feel strong. Being strong isn't a feeling, I said. It's a choice. Claire smiled just a little. You sound just like Grandpa. He used to say that. He was a wise man. 3 days later, I went to the hardware store to buy sandpaper. When I came home, Claire's car was gone. Her bedroom was empty. Clean. The bed was made. She'd vacuumed. On the kitchen counter, there was an envelope with my name on it. I opened it with trembling hands. The letter was 2 pages long, written by hand, in Claire's careful script. It started with, Dear Dad, and ended with, I love you. In between was everything she couldn't say to my face. I sat at the kitchen table and opened the envelope. 2 sheets of paper, front and back, filled with her handwriting. The ink was smudged in places. She'd been crying when she wrote it. Dear Dad, I'm writing this because I don't have the courage to say it to your face. I'm sorry. Those words will never be enough, but they're all I have. I'm sorry for the past 8 years, for letting Connor treat you like you didn't matter, for staying silent when he told you to leave your house, the house you built, the house where Mom lived, for believing his lies instead of what I knew in my heart. For 8 years, Connor told me you resented us, that you were too polite to say it, but you wanted us gone, that you talked badly about us to the neighbors, that you were getting old, bitter, difficult. I believed him. I'm so ashamed. The truth is, it was easier to believe Connor than to face my own guilt. I knew we were using you. I knew Connor was using you. And if I admitted that I'd have to do something, I was too weak. too scared, too dependent. I lost myself in this marriage, Dad. I became someone I don't recognize. Someone who could betray her own father for a man who never loved her. Now I understand. Connor didn't marry me because he loved me. He saw an opportunity, a house to take, money to eventually have. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect you to want me in your life. But I need you to know I love you. I never stopped. Even when I couldn't show it. Even when I chose him over you. I'm filing for divorce. I'm renting my own apartment. I'm going to figure out who I am outside of this mess. I'll understand if you don't want to see me. But if there's any chance I'll come back in 3 days. I'll knock. And I'll understand if you don't answer. I love you, Dad. I'm so sorry. Claire. I finished reading, set the letter on the table, and put my face in my hands. I cried. For the 8 years we'd lost. For Claire's pain. For Marianne not being here to help us. But also for hope. She said she'd come back. 3 days. I spent those 3 days cleaning, vacuumed the living room, dusted Marianne's photograph, the glass repaired now, scrubbed the kitchen, even cleaned the guest bedroom, though I didn't know why. Bernard stopped by on the 2nd day. He found me polishing the counters. "You're going to wear a hole in that granite," he said. I handed him the letter. He read it slowly, then folded it carefully and gave it back. "She's coming home, Theo. This isn't her home anymore." "Home isn't a place," Bernard said. "It's people." On the 3rd day, I was a wreck. I woke at 5 and couldn't go back to sleep. I made coffee, paced, checked the driveway. By noon, I'd convinced myself she wouldn't come. At 4 o'clock, a car pulled in. Claire's. My heart hammered. I stood frozen, listening to her footsteps on the porch. A knock. I forced myself to move. I walked to the door, took a breath, and opened it. Claire stood there in jeans and a sweater, her eyes red and swollen. She'd been crying on the drive. "Hi, Dad," she whispered. "Hi, sweetheart." We stood there, neither of us knowing what to do. "Come in," I said. She sat on the sofa. I took my chair. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. "Did you read it?" she asked. 3 times. I meant every word. "I know." Silence. I leaned forward. "Claire, I need you to understand something." She looked at me, fear and hope in her eyes. "I forgive you," I said. Her breath hitched. "Truly," I continued. "But forgiveness doesn't mean everything goes back to how it was. I can't forget the past 8 years. We need to start over, not as father and daughter living under one roof, but as 2 people who love each other and are trying to learn how to trust each other again." Tears filled her eyes. "I want that. It won't be easy. I know. It's going to take time and honesty. I'm willing, Dad. I promise." I studied her face. I saw Marianne in her, the shape of her eyes, the curve of her mouth, but I also saw someone lost, trying to find her way back. "Then I'm willing to try too." Claire broke. She covered her face and sobbed deep, shaking sobs. I stood, crossed the room, and sat beside her. She leaned into me, burying her face in my shoulder. I wrapped my arms around her. For the first time in 8 years, I held my daughter. She cried. I cried. We sat like that for a long time. Eventually, Claire pulled back and wiped her eyes. "I'm a mess. You're allowed to be." She laughed, small and watery. "Can we try something?" "What?" "Weekly dinners. On Sundays. Like Mom used to do." The words hit hard. Marianne's Sunday dinners. Pot roast and mashed potatoes. The four of us around the table back when things were good. I'd like that, I said. Claire nodded. And I want to pay you back. For rent, utilities, everything. I need to take responsibility. I wanted to argue, but I understood. This was part of how she'd heal. Okay, we'll work out a payment plan you can afford. Thank you. We talked for another hour. She told me about her apartment, a small one-bedroom downtown. She was job hunting, putting together a resume after 8 years. The divorce was moving forward, though Connor was contesting it. She'd started therapy twice a week. I have a lot to work through, she said. That takes courage. I don't feel courageous. Courage isn't a feeling, I said. It's a choice. She smiled a real smile. You sound like Grandpa. He was a wise man. Eventually, she glanced at the clock. I should go. I walked her to the door. Dad. Yes, I love you. I love you too, Claire Bear. She stopped. You haven't called me that since I was little. You'll always be my Claire Bear. Tears spilled down her cheeks, but she was smiling. She hugged me tightly. Thank you. Then she left. I stood on the porch and watched her taillights disappear. Then I went inside and leaned against the door. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. That evening, I sat on the back porch and watched the sunset. Orange and pink and purple painted the sky over the mountains. I thought about everything. The lottery, the betrayal, the fight, the victory. And now this, the beginning of something I'd thought was lost. I'm proud of you, Theodore Marianne's voice said in my head. I hope so, Murray, I whispered. My phone buzzed. A text from Claire. Thank you for giving me a second chance. See you Sunday. I love you. I smiled and typed back. I love you too. 5 p.m. Sunday. I'll make pot roast. Perfect. That night I slept in my own bed in my own house. Claire's letter sat on my nightstand. Sunday dinner was planned. When I woke the next morning, sunlight streamed through Marianne's curtains, the ones she'd sewn by hand 30 years ago. I lay there watching the light, and I realized something. I had won more than a lottery. I had gotten my life back. The money hit my account on Tuesday, June 18th. $47,500,000. I stared at the number for 20 minutes, then called Bernard. It's real, I said. What are you going to do with it? Anything I want. I fought for it. The next day, I met Caroline Fisher, the financial advisor Rachel recommended. Her office was downtown leather chairs and mountain views. Caroline was 56, gray-haired, direct. Theo, what do you want your money to do? I want safety. I want to help my daughter. And I want to honor my wife. We spent 2 hours planning. Caroline recommended diversification, index funds, bonds, real estate trusts, savings. Not this gives you about $1.5 million a year in passive income while preserving your principal. Every year, you can live comfortably and fund charitable work. Study, an idea sparked. What if I wanted to help elderly people whose families try to take advantage of them, who get kicked out of their homes, who need lawyers but can't afford them? Caroline smiled. Not a legal protection fund. With $20 million, you could fund it in perpetuity. I thought about Marianne, who'd always stood up for those who couldn't. I want to do that. I called Rachel. I want to establish the Marsh Elder Protection Fund. $20 million. To help elderly victims of financial abuse. I want you as legal director and Lisa Hernandez as consultant. Rachel's voice caught. Theo, that's incredible. In July, we made it official. Rachel opened an office in Portland. Lisa came on 3 days a week. By September, we'd taken our first case, an 82-year-old woman whose son forged power of attorney to seize her home. Rachel won in 6 weeks. The woman called me crying. "You saved my life." "No, ma'am. You saved your own. We just gave you the tools." By year's end, the fund had helped 47 people. Marianne would have loved it, but I needed something else. In August, I put the Ponderosa Lane house up for sale. Bernard came over. "You sure? I built this with Marianne. Every board, every nail. But Connor and Claire left a stain I can't wash out. I need a fresh start." "Where will you go?" "The coast. Cannon Beach. Ocean air, endless horizon. A place where I could breathe." The house sold in 3 weeks. A young family with 2 kids. I took very little. Marianne's photograph, my tools, a few pieces of furniture. In late August, I bought a house in Cannon Beach. Modern glass and wood overlooking the Pacific. It had a workshop with windows where I could hear the waves. It wasn't the house Marianne and I built, but it was mine. The first morning I walked to the beach. The sun rose over the water, painting the sky orange and gold. The air smelled like salt and freedom. Bernard and Maureen visited often. We'd walk the beach, drink coffee on the deck. "You look lighter," Maureen said one day. She was right. Like I'd been carrying a weight for 8 years and finally set it down. Claire drove out every other Sunday. 3 hours from Bend, but she never missed. We'd cook dinner pot roast like Marianne used to make. We'd sit on the deck, watch the sunset, talk. In September, her divorce finalized. "How do you feel?" I asked. "Free. Scared, but free." In October, she got a job at the Bend Community Center. $15 an hour. "It's not much," she said. "But I earned it. I haven't earned anything in 8 years. I'm proud of you. Really. Really." In December, I helped her move into her apartment. Small, clean hers. "It's not much. It's perfect." Christmas was quiet, just us at the beach house. Claire brought cookies slightly burnt. I made pot roast. We exchanged gifts. I gave her a photo album Marianne had made. Claire gave me a framed photograph of Marianne and me from the 90s. "I found it in storage. I thought you should have it." I cried. Christmas together. Just the 2 of us. It was enough. Spring came. April 2025. 1 year since the mediation. I was in the garden one morning planting daffodils, Marianne's favorite. I was 73, but still strong. A car pulled up. Claire with gardening gloves. "Morning, Dad. Thought you could use help." "You don't have to. I want to." We knelt side by side planting bulbs where Marianne's garden used to be. "Dad, yeah, thank you for not giving up on me." "I could never give up on you. Connor did." "I'm not Connor." "No, you're not." We finished, stood, brushed dirt off our knees. "When will they bloom?" "Late spring, maybe May." "Mom would love this." She would. We sat on the deck steps, morning sun warmed the ocean stretching before us. I looked around, the house I'd bought, my daughter beside me, the garden I was planting, the life I'd fought to reclaim. "I used to think a house was just walls and a roof," I said. "Boards and nails, things I could measure." Claire listened. "But it's not. A house is memories, the people who filled it, your mother's laugh, your first steps, the fights, the forgiveness, the love. Is that why you fought so hard?" "I fought because letting Connor take it would mean admitting none of it mattered." That 36 years with your mother could be erased by greed. I didn't fight for money. I fought for meaning. Claire leaned her head on my shoulder. You won, Dad. We both did. I sat there, the Pacific stretching to the horizon. The lottery ticket, the betrayal, the battle, the victory, the fund helping 47 people. Claire free and healing. Marianne's memory honored. I was happy, not perfect, not without scars, but happy. For the first time since Marianne passed, I was truly happy. People say family is everything. I believe that. But family isn't just people who share your roof or blood. Family is the people who see you, who stand beside you, who tell the truth, even when it hurts. Connor and Claire lived in my house 8 years. But Bernard, Maureen, Pastor Joyce, Rachel, they were family when it mattered. And Claire found her way back. If you're facing betrayal, loss, fear, know this. You have the right to protect what's yours. Your home, your dignity, your peace. Love doesn't mean letting people take everything. Fight for what matters. Fight with honor. When it's over, leave the door open for forgiveness. Not because they deserve it, but because you do. I'm 73. I have more money than I can spend. But the richest thing I have is Sunday dinners with my daughter working in the garden, knowing I stood up when it mattered. That's worth more than $95 million. It's worth everything. What would you do if you were in my position? Leave a comment. Tell me your story. Thank you for listening to mine. I'm Theodore Marsh from Cannon Beach, Oregon. Take care of each other. Looking back on this family story, I see a man who almost lost everything, not because he was weak, but because he loved too much and trusted too blindly. Don't be like I was. Don't ignore the warning signs. Don't let 8 years pass while someone slowly takes your home, your dignity, your peace. My advice: set boundaries early. Love doesn't mean letting people walk over you. Dad revenge isn't about cruelty. It's about standing up for what's right when everyone expects you to surrender. I fought not for money, but for meaning. For the memory of Marianne. For the house we built. For my own soul. This family story taught me that betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from those you love. But it also taught me that redemption is possible. Claire found her way back. I found my peace. Dad revenge became dad justice, then dad forgiveness, then dad healing. My personal belief: God doesn't give us trials to break us, but to reveal who we truly are. When Connor tried to steal my home, God showed me I was stronger than I knew. When Claire returned, God reminded me that forgiveness is divine, not because they deserve it, but because we do. If you're in a family story like mine, facing manipulation, greed, betrayal, know this: you are not alone. Fight with honor. Protect what's yours. And when the dust settles, leave the door open for those who genuinely seek to make amends. Dad revenge isn't the goal. Peace is. Thank you for walking this journey with me to the end. I'd love to hear your perspective. What would you have done if you were in Theodore's shoes? Please leave a comment sharing your thoughts. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing so you don't miss future stories. A gentle reminder: while inspired by real social dynamics around elder financial abuse, some elements have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. If this content isn't your preference, feel free to explore other videos that suit you better. I'm Theodore Marsh from Cannon Beach, Oregon. Take care of each other.
걱정 없이 먹을 수 있어서. 로야 안녕? 아니 안 추워. 나 지금 힘들어. 이거 장 보고 가는데 너무 힘들어가지고. 아니 무거워서 쉬고 있어. 무거워서 쉬고 있는 거라고. 밖에서 뭐 하는 게 아니고. 아이고 힘들어.